Katie, I'm also a big fan of this little jingle. Such a happy way to start an episode. Hey, Brandon.
Hello, how are y'all?
Good.
Yeah.
It's
There's a thing happening in my day job this week that I'm a little like, but I'm good.
Yeah. Let's do the intro ditty real quick, and then we can get into talking because we missed it last time. So for everybody watching, welcome to our Monday night live stream. Let's Talk Lorcana, which is a name we gave the stream and said we'll come up with a better one, and we never did.
Yeah, actually, that is true.
74 episodes
It's
later,
a good one.
That is definitely a placeholder title here.
We're still talking Lorcana. This is a show where we talk all things Lorcana from the last week, catch up on the latest news, talk some decks, interview some folks, and all around hang out and have a good time. So if you're here for the first time, welcome. Feel free to chat throughout the show. We love displaying your questions. For example, we love highlighting the fact that we have somebody from Peru watching. So Shiny Rowlet, thanks so much for joining us. One of our favorite Lorcana artists is from Peru. So
yeah,
it's great having you here. Anyway, so welcome. And
this was also not supposed to be a weekly show too. I remember when we started, you're like, nah, well, we're gonna just use this word when like we decide to live stream. Like it doesn't have to be every week.
I don't remember.
Look at you
now. How the tides have changed. Anyway,
I think a lot of people are happy that it turned into a weekly thing.
Well, we were also like 1 month out from having Olena when we started this show. So I was like, I don't know how I'm going to feel about this. Like once we have Cuban, we have to keep alive.
Yeah.
How are you this week, Brandon?
It's Monday and I'm tired already.
Yeah.
I also kind of have a big work thing. But it's going to last for multiple months. So I'm just kind of getting used to it at this point. And I went home, I didn't go home. I was out of town last weekend for my mom's birthday. So that was fun. I was celebrating that with her.
Happy birthday, Brandon's mom.
I did miss most of Melbourne. I was able to tune in occasionally throughout the weekend and saw some different matchups. I was trying to look at sort of what day 2 looked like today. It looked like there was a lot of Ruby Sapphire, mainly a lot of Sapphire in general. And there seems to be a lot of stuff that happened at Melbourne that I missed that we'll talk about later. But
some things,
other than that, I'm doing good. I literally just finished sleeving up a deck for League tomorrow.
Yeah,
fun. What are you gonna play?
Since Set Champs is basically over, our LGS does this thing every other week or so where it's a free entry tournament and you win one of the pins. Like the winner walks away with one of the pins that comes in the OP kits. But because I don't have Set Champs or anything to practice, I'm just bringing a fun deck and I'm bringing my Stitch Rockstar deck. So I'm bringing my signed Stitch Rockstar to play along with a couple of the old Set Champs Rockstars in there and some new Japanese cards that I pulled, like the Japanese there's also a Japanese Rockstar in here somewhere. So that's what I'm doing. How are you guys?
Good. Also busy. Erin said as she said, huge work event this weekend. So a lot of full-time dad job for me, and then Erin's working late every day, so it's a hectic week. But
we raised like a third of our operating budget in like a night, so it's kind of a lot.
Sure.
One thing that is really nice that I'm excited about, I don't usually pay attention to the Grammys. I did pay attention to the Grammys last night. I'm a big Kendrick fan, so it was a great day for me yesterday because he had a Grammy in every category, so that was fun. Sorry, that was random, but
that was not random. That's what this portion of the show is about.
Brings us joy. I did have a fun idea. I am going to have to wear a black tie this weekend for this event. So I have a tux and all that. And I thought about bringing some Lorcana cards and trying to like stage some photos. I don't know if Erin's a big fan, but if anybody has any good ideas for like black tie Lorcana cards that I can like, I don't know.
There's Cobra. That's like the first one that comes up.
Okay. Bubbles.
Oh yeah,
You're not
Bubbles.
going to bother
Cobra
any of the
Bubbles.
guests while you're doing this, are you?
Oh no, of course not.
Okay.
He's gonna be actively trying to teach people Lorcana. What are you talking
I'm
about?
just imagining one of my donors coming up to me and being like, there's this guy out in the lobby, like asking people to take pictures with random cards. Be
Yeah.
like,
Something about a gateway. I don't.
Yeah, he's got a table set up. Yep, peddling starter decks. I don't know. Kronk the Bouncer, Katie says. That's a good one.
Oh, that is a good one.
That
Yeah.
could be a fun. Yeah. All right. I'm getting ideas.
I also have a little banquet that I have to go to this week on Thursday, and I rarely have to wear like suit attire, but this is a suit attire kind of thing. I'm kind of excited because I get to wear this Disney tie. I don't have it with me,
Ooh.
but all the way back when we were asked to cast Atlanta, I was like, I don't know what they want us to wear. I'm gonna wear a suit and stuff, and I'm like, I need a tie, and I didn't have a tie, so I ordered like Disney little navy tie with like really tiny red Mickey ears all over it. And I was so
Aw.
excited, and then never wore it because it was way too uncomfortable to do all stream, and it also was way dressier than I think they wanted us to. So I will get to wear it for this, and I'm excited about that.
Oh, that's fun. You have to take pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
You in a fancy suit.
Yeah. Katie says a satin bucket hat, perhaps.
I wish if I
Yeah.
could get away with the bucket hat, that'd be awesome. I don't think they'll let me though.
Oh, yeah. We'll see. It's now I want to find a
I
formal
feel like the
bucket hat.
guy who shows up at a formal event with like a satin bucket hat is normally worth like at least a couple $1 million. So
That's fair.
like 10 years ago, I had a gala and my presenting sponsor of the gala showed up in cargo shorts and like it was like a black tie.
Oh my gosh.
It was a black tie gala. And I was like, you know what? You do you, dude. You
Yeah, when
do
you're at
you.
that level, you just can kind of do whatever you want, and like it
Yeah.
doesn't matter.
So yeah, maybe satin bucket hat just, is everybody's gonna be like, who's that guy? He
Who's
must be
this dude?
important.
Yeah, all sorts of great suggestions from the chat. Keep them coming.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry, we're like so
So much to talk about. Well, there's a few things to talk about this week. We're kind of like stalling. So first bit of news. So earlier in the week, before Melbourne, kicked off, we got some news about an event happening Valentine's Day, that Brahmasburg is sponsoring. Bren, you want to kind of talk us through that?
As far as I understand, participating LGSs are hosting an event. Is it the 8th through the 15th? I don't actually remember the dates.
No, I need to double check too.
I think it's the 8th through the 15th. And I'll be honest, I'm a little bit confused about this because everything that I've seen from Disney Lorcana, like socials and out, says it's supposed to be a free event. But then I heard of a bunch of stores making it a paid event. And we'll get to that in a second. But the event, it's a Valentine's Day event. You can show up with you and a significant other or a friend, I guess, and play Pack Rush for free. You each get 2 packs, supposedly for free. And you can play Pack Rush and get to keep the cards. And I thought that was a really awesome free event, just a little thing people can stop in and do. I think it's a good way to have like a super low barrier to entry for people to come in and maybe try out the game, look at a couple cards, whatever, if they want to. So I really like that idea. Then I found out LGSs were charging for it. And apparently the stuff that was actually mailed to LGSs, because I believe LGSs are getting like 2 boxes for free, roughly 48 packs or something for free in order to do this. They can charge for it if they provide additional pricing. So I didn't look at this page, but I saw on Twitter earlier today, I think Disney Lorcana tweet about it, and in there it says that it's a free event. So confused me a little bit, but regardless, anybody interested wants to do something fun for Valentine's Day, call up your local LGS, see if they're doing this. And I think it's a fun little event that you could go to on whatever day they decide to do it, or maybe they're hosting it all week long.
I think so too. I can understand the charging, especially if you I don't know, give out like chocolate covered strawberries to everybody who comes, or maybe we're doing like a sparkling ciders sort of situation and like
Mhm.
trying to make it more of like an event
Yeah.
around like this pack rush concept versus like the LGS who just like cracks the 2 boxes and like, here's everybody's packs. We'll see you in an hour type of thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Nevertheless, it's a very cool thing for
love the
Ravensburger to
concept.
do, to
Yeah.
send
Yeah.
out packs and be like, here you go, like here's a treat for your community. And yeah, and I will say too, I don't know, I don't know that they confirmed which packs it is, but if it is Inklands and Ursula's Return, Inklands has like $4 Chernobog's followers in it, and there's there's some value in these. So going to get a couple packs with you and somebody else is it's a cool
I do
thing.
feel like if LGSs play their cards right,
Mhm.
this could be like a really cool, like Valentine's Day event, like maybe a way to get more like women involved in your community.
Mhm.
Because I know, I mean, even when I was married to this guy, when we lived in Washington, a friend of mine and I would go out with each other on Valentine's Day. And I think Liam and her boyfriend at the time would like stay home and play video games, and we would go do some sort of like fun Valentine's Day thing. So I mean, I think if LGS is like
cool.
really invest in this and think about it, I think it could be a really great way to expand like your player base and like diversity in the game in your community.
When it's such a simple event, I feel like you can just do it for so many other things as well. Like even just randomly host like a children's event or something where the goal is to like try to get kids in to play and like literally run this exact same event. They can come in, they each get 2 packs for free, and they play pack rush with each other. I think it's a super approachable thing. So I like it.
Yeah,
it's very cool. So that happened midweek, I think, and I think that's it for Lorcana news until Melbourne kicked off this week.
Although I guess it is to say we do know that February 10th reveals and stuff should start, right? That's the date that was given to us, which is next week, exactly 1 week away. So maybe some stuff will start happening.
Yeah.
Oh wait, if it's on February 10th, we're gonna have to like scramble last minute. If reveals are starting like on the 10th, the 3 of us at night are gonna be like,
it's gonna be a this weekend.
That Monday is gonna be yeah.
It's gonna be crazy. We're probably gonna get, I mean, if you do the math, every day that we don't get more cards, the card to day remaining ratio shifts significantly.
It's gonna be tight. Like I used to be one of the people who wanted to get those videos out of all the cards that revealed, and I even remember way back before the first chapter release, like we'd get 2 cards in a week and we'd all make a video
about
for
it.
both of those cards. I do not envy the creators that are trying to do that for this release cycle, because I imagine we're going to get dozens of cards a day leading up to release, as close as we're pushing it.
Yeah, I mean, mad respect to all you folks, all you content creators out there who jam out those reveal videos right away, because it's one of those things. If you're not first or at least very, very early, you're last.
Like, why? What's the point of making? Yeah.
And some people turn them quick, and I'm impressed.
I was going to say, I feel like we have so many of those reveal videos like saved on our hard drive that nobody's ever seen, because we would like go in and film them, and then we'd get like through the editing process and like 3 other people had already posted their reveal video, and we're like, well, at this point, we're not going to release it.
Yeah,
it's true. But anyway, all right. So that's that. I guess we should get on to the big event this weekend, huh?
Yeah. What happened this weekend?
Well, there was a massive Lorcana event, and so all of us following Lorcana since the beginning have known about Lorcana challenges in North America and Europe, and building up towards nationals. And then a few months ago we found out that with the release of Lorcana in Australia, there was going to be a Disney Lorcana challenge in Australia, in Melbourne, which I think I'm saying properly. Melbourne.
I
watched
know.
a lot of Bluey.
Multiple different pronunciations.
However, that is where Bluey is from. Hello.
Is it true?
Yes.
Oh.
That is where
Bluey
she is
cards
from.
win.
They have Bluey World in Melbourne. So if anybody went to Bluey World, I need pictures.
Yeah, let us know.
or like Bluey Land. I don't know what they're calling it.
Yeah, Bluey Place. But yeah, so this challenge popped up, which was kind of cool to see. So it opened up, the chance to qualify for Worlds, or at a very minimum, it opened up a very high level Lorcana event to a brand new market. So players there who weren't able to spend a significant amount of money it takes traveling between continents, over the Pacific, to participate in some of the North American challenges, got to participate in their own challenge. There's actually some content creators on Instagram who posted some really great videos about the event and what it meant to them to have an event in their backyard that they could participate in. So that was neat to see. And then it also provided, for anybody not tracking, 2 slots to Worlds, the yet to be announced Worlds, in Disney World, for the top 2 finishers. So it did offer an avenue there for people to make it in. So it was really, really cool to see. I
love how you're like, there are 2 spots world to the top 2 finishers. I'm like, no, they definitely gave it to the 3rd and the 4th place finish.
Yeah. Just random sportsmanship awards. So yeah, this is really cool to see. I got to catch some of the coverage this weekend. Really only the top 64 or the day 2 stuff.
He said that he caught some of it, but you watched the entire day 2.
Yeah,
you were up until 2.
Oh, that's a lot of it. That's like half of it.
It's a good portion of it.
Yeah, so
I think I got to watch like the top 64 round and then part of maybe the top 8. I don't remember. That's pretty much it.
I will say it was really cool, like, because it was actually at a relatively decent hour here in the States, because like coverage started at like, I don't know, noon or 2. So
yeah, I remember I was laying on the couch at the place I was at this weekend at like 10 p.m. and they were on lunch break, and it was like, we're on lunch break, and I'm like, this feels really weird. I'm like falling asleep on the couch and it's lunch.
Yeah. I do want to bring in our guest
Liam's
to talk
like,
about this, but
wrap it
first,
up.
I do have to address this. A little Laura on Twitter pointing out it's Melbourne, and I was like, that seems weird. And then I'm like, it's an Australian accent, so
Melbourne.
It would be Melbourne, right?
I don't know.
Down to Melbourne. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds good. We'll go with that, sweetie.
Yeah.
Good job.
Melbourne. Anyway, all right.
Now y'all have got him going. Now
so
he's gonna start doing all of his accents.
Yeah. So I do want to talk about the challenge. There's plenty to talk about with the challenge. I want to talk about deck lists and other stuff. But before we do that, I want to bring in our first guest. Really excited to welcome back to the channel for, I think, the 4th time. Sailor, welcome in.
Hey, hello everyone.
Hey. Most of you will, if you've been here before, recognize Sailor, a member of Team Labyrinth, one of the premier Ruby Sapphire players, and a Worlds qualifier. So it's pretty awesome to have you here, Sailor. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for inviting me again. I'm always very glad to be invited and talk to you all. And I think there's a lot to say about this last DLC of the season. A lot of positive, some less positive also, but I think it's been basically the year has been really positive in terms of what did we get, and I feel like it'd be bad to end the year with only the negative stuff being out about. So I'm gonna try to highlight some of the positive stuff also, but of course we'll need to go through what happened there just to make everybody know about it, and also maybe get something good out of that situation and maybe try to improve.
Yeah, actually, I love that approach. I am not gonna lie, I've had a bit of a hard time today reading where I could a lot of the social media posts and diving into Reddit and talking to different people who are at the event, trying to figure out how to address this. But I love the approach that you just highlighted. Let's do that. Let's talk about the positives that came out of it, and we'll talk about what's all over social media, some of the negatives, and then I think that all of us have some suggestions and some ideas for how we take those negatives and move forward. So I'm just saying what you said.
First, congratulations to Din Can Pham.
Yeah.
What a true hard-working player. Like, this need to be highlighted as more than anything else. I feel like this guy went to IF, I think I can comfortably say the most DLCs out of all the other players.
Yeah.
Did really well in a lot of them, but never quite enough to win, but enough to qualify into both of the continentals, right? Both in Europe and NA. And at both of these, he fell short of making day 2 on both of these occasions. And even though we were expecting him to, and I think that's one of the narrative that I want to push leading up to another subject we'll talk about later on, is that we're always expecting so much from these players, right? Because they're performing quite often, but we're expecting them to perform at the highest stages all the time, which is very hard because it's a card game. If we would be expecting all of us to be winning every time, that would be just a different game. There's variance in TCGs that means that it's just not realistic, right, to expect that from players. And so he didn't perform as he would have liked on those 2 continentals, and decided that he would get one last shot at it at the DLC Melbourne, and worked very, very hard, and just got to first position. So a huge congrats on Din Can Pham, DKP, very well deserved. And it was an honor to watch your game being played.
One thing to highlight too, real quick, before we move anywhere, that I've loved following DKP across this, partially because he was very early on, one of the first players to ever qualify in both continents for continentals. That he's played Ruby Sapphire the entire time. I don't think he's played any other deck at any of the DLCs, but his versions of Ruby Sapphire have always been so creative and like different than sort of the normal blend that we see. It's just something that I love to see from top level players, because it's one thing to be able to like be good at the game and understand the game at a fundamental level, but to be able to innovate on a deck, no matter if you're bringing multiple decks to different DLCs and finding ones to sort of fit the current meta, or you're just kind of a master of a particular deck and are willing to try stuff that other people aren't willing to try. It was really cool to see his version of that for Melbourne.
Yeah. And if I want to be completely honest with you all, I have to say, like, we've been having conflicting like conversation, him and I, right, about our versions of the deck, and it's always been Sailor's version versus the DKP version, and there's a bit of a fight between the 2 different approaches. And I feel like at some point there was even like, okay, is he trying just to be different? Are we just doing the things because we want to be our own? And I just I just want to emphasize that it's not always like good, and it's sometimes it's a bit like relationships between 2 players that are like building on the same ink combinations can just be a little bit weird. But DKP I knew was always a good player, and he would try to tell me like these things about the choices that I would make, and it was like, I don't agree, I disagree, and we would basically disagree a lot talking about it. And here I think he just embraced a complete other vision of the deck, of the Ruby Sapphire list, that he was trying to envision for the whole season, but he wouldn't get he didn't have the cards, he didn't have the context to go fully commit for something very different. And so we were kind of always close from each other, even though we had differentiation on how to approach it. But this deck is 100% not a Ruby Sapphire control deck. Like, it's not the same archetype at all. It's a tempo Ruby Sapphire burn deck, basically. If you're trying to play this deck as if you would play the Sisu on Ice, right, or even the old Ruby Sapphire Din Can Pham style of decks, you'll probably don't get it and don't get like how this plays out. There's the reason why it only plays 3 Harem is because it's not looking to play Harems. It's basically looking to play Shark into actions or mana. So Shark and mana is 2 win conditions. Goofy is like the worst version of Shark. And then everything else is trying to let you find those 2 cards and help them synergize, right? So the way to synergize with the Magnetic Manners are the Be Prepared first, right? And the Brawl and the Let It Go, and the Sharks themselves. Because once you've put the Manner, it puts so much pressure on your opponent that they'll need to challenge it, and that's your perfect occasion to punish that with the Shark. Because then you'll be able to challenge them back and get actions that give you lore, that give you more cards, etc., etc. So this deck is very cohesive, and the Hirems are basically the Talas are the remaining slots that just like gets you to the other cards. And the Maui also punish challenging and questing by being just like a monstrous body on board. And basically this deck doesn't really want to get past 6, 7, or 8 ink. It's not looking to go ramp and control and do many things a turn. It just wants to play the Shark and amass a good number of like cheap actions and just chain them and burn your opponent out of the game. So it's a very different approach, very innovative, and I could see how he could catch people off guard, specifically in a DLC where, of course, there's going to be a wider variety of players that don't necessarily have the skills to adapt to novelty. So people go to these events and they expect things and they practice toward those and become very good at playing against certain strategies. And then every time people throw something very different, very innovative like that, they have a hard time adapting on the spot. And I think that's something that a good player, a great player as CKP was able to do towards that tournament. But the true feat for me was able to keep doing it on the day 2 with open deck lists. Because once you realize what this deck is about, you can adapt your game plan, and you should, because this is not a Ruby Sapphire traditional list. And yeah, so I just wanted to highlight the innovative side of it, but also how and what does it want to do.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, you are highlighting it's very different in terms of strategy. If what you're saying is true, than the traditional deck that wants to accumulate all the ink, and then get to a point where it can start dumping huge cards down, and then activating them same turn, playing Lucky Dime, maybe another character activating it same turn, and just like rummaging through the deck, dumping more ink on the board. It also occurs to me that with Manners, this is probably like very good into the mirror. And so that probably factored into the choice as well. And I think if I remember correctly, I don't have the day 2 brackets up in front of me, but DKP was matched into this, not only in the finals, but in other matches leading up to the finals. So if this deck is good into the mirror, it's a fantastic choice into the meta that we've been seeing.
Yeah, I think it's, as I said, well, it was specifically good against the French Ruby Sapphire list because they didn't run any of the Maui Hero Duel. And so the Manor just runs free against those lists. Of course, there's 2 hideaways in Clément and Fabien's list. But they don't run, the Maui. They only run 2 Scars as their rush characters. And so you can build up a hand so that you can punish them for not having as many answers. And for people that will play the regular Ruby Sapphire CC on Ice style of decks against that, I would encourage you to prioritize Tala very highly and just keep her onto the board. Because once you have Tala out, if they ever put the manor down, they get heavily punished by a Maui hero to all being able to do 9 in one sweep, right? And so that's true for all locations. You never want to be deploying them if your opponent can take them out without even spending any resources on it, right? And so I see Ed in the chat, and it makes me think about also like a signature move, which is the Ruby Amethyst played like the be prepared into the double or triple location style of thing, right? And so the way to play around that, of course, before the be prepared, is to have a Tala out and make them guess if you have the Maui. You don't even have to have the Maui in hand. Just the fear of it can lead your opponent inking the manor, right? Or if they do and you have it, then you sometimes win on the spot because they've lost the resources in a turn where they didn't deploy anything on board.
Yeah. No, I have up for those who missed the switch. I have now up the French control deck that was played in Melbourne. This is the deck that the runner-up played, Clement Fusade, saying his name terribly, but you
Clement Fusade.
Clement Fusade. You said it earlier, and it was so elegant. But yeah, so as the chat points out, there's no 5-drop Maui. Scar, as you highlighted, Sailor is the rush character here. We do have Fishbone Quill back in, Lucky Dime there for a win con. And in this particular version, there's no Maui shark. Are there the Maui sharks? Are
yes. That was their win condition.
We do have the dime hanging around though, and those have been worked out in some lists. Yeah.
So this one was a bit of a bigger kind of Ruby Sapphire list, and Fabien actually shared it to me like 3 weeks ago, and I shared to him that I almost played Quill again at Continentals with a very heavy board wipe style of decks. I had like 4 Be Prepared, 4 Big Sisu, 2 Scar in that list, 1 Scar in that list. I had like 9 sweepers plus Quill, and I was just like ramping to one of those and take the board. I didn't have the guts to play that because it was a little bit more inconsistent, and some of these decks could really punish you for doing that sorts of heavy committal Be Prepared lines, which are in the form of like the Lilo and Pete and that sort of thing. Of course, if they Pete and then you add the Scar, it was always feeling nice, but you couldn't just run Scars because Scars is obviously much worse than Be Prepared is. And so sometimes the one that I have would not align with the one disruption that my opponent had, and I decided not to run that kind of list because for me it was too kind of like feast or famine style of deck, and I wanted to have something a little bit more consistent with a game plan that I can very much adapt to my opponents. So but yeah, this is just it just shows that with now 6 sets in Lorcana, we can do so much with the same ink, the same 2 ink combo, right? And Ed, I've also been working recently on like another list that runs like very, very different, very much high, even heavier on the Sisu package and stuff like that. And it's always nice to see, and like 0 Be Prepared. And so, and he says in the chat, like there's conceptualize the difference is like you are on either Be Prepared or Sisu. I would say like my lists are very much Sisu, but also they play Be Prepared as a way for my opponent to guess which one I have. And it's hard for people to actually play around everything once you set up some of the cards and you have all of that in your deck, right? And I feel like people play Pete. Well, I can play like a Rush Maui or a Medusa, and if they play like a more committal all in board because they're playing around a Maui or Medusa style of thing, then you can Be Prep them. Or your Big Sisu them if they have like lower to the ground style of characters, and then you start questing. So yeah, all sorts of different variations, and yeah, I'm happy that it worked out for them in very different ways.
Yeah,
I love hearing about all of these like conceptualizations of different ideas for decks and how you can build them separately from each other, but at the same time all of them have success. And I want to go like one step deeper into this just because I think something that I want to know, and hopefully other listeners will learn something from it as well. But like I remember all the way back in set 3 when Queen's Castle was like super big. Everybody realized, all right, we have to run a lot of fox crab combos so that we can deal with these locations. And as sets continued, more answers were printed, like Hideaway for locations. And even the same thing with sort of this conversation around Be Prepared or Sisu. You know, we have like Ursula's and Pete's and things like that. Like there are multiple answers to a lot of these strategies throughout the meta. What are you looking for as a top player when testing these decks and different versions of these decks, to decide like, hey, I'm gonna run with this version that might be, you know, maybe a little bit riskier into if people are running these sorts of answers, but if they're not, then I have an edge.
So it's always like what is the most talked about style of decks? What is being the most successful decks in like the last few weeks before an event? And then, okay, is the meta full of Pete? Is the meta full of 2-drop Ursula? Is the meta full of locations? Have people cut their 5-cost Maui out of their Ruby decks? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So all those evaluations makes you think about, okay, like we know people are cutting 5-cost Maui. What is good against 5-cost Maui? Well, the locations for sure is one of the answers, but there's many other things because Maui is one of the best card in the game. But so you can expect. So why are they cutting Maui? Is because it's bad into Ruby Sapphire, right? So so the more Ruby Sapphire is at the top of the meta game, the more the decks are building around that. And how are they building around that? Mostly they need to go under. And if everybody's trying to go under Ruby Sapphire, what's my approach of how to deal with that switch in metagame? And one of the things that Potkana has been saying a lot is that it's crazy how Lorcana is always in flux. It's always changing. It's always evolving within a set, right? So we were at the last very important event of the Azraitsi meta, and we saw many different builds doing something very different from the other tournaments. But I have to say, it's for most of us that are doing these decks innovations, or I would say like construction, we're always thinking about what's the field, and the way we build decks for continentals cannot be the same as we do for a DLC. And if we want to be honest, like people came to that DLC Melbourne expecting people to be less experienced than the 6th DLCs of US, right? Like where people grew a lot of experience, right? It's not their first one because, as we all know, at Seattle, it was become like almost like a family reunion. It's all the same people that have been there the whole season, right? And so everybody grew a lot of knowledge over this last year. And so when you're thinking about what to expect at Melbourne, it's their first DLC, and there's going to be a bunch of new players. And so what are the good ways that maybe you can play cards that are hard for your newer players to play around, or something that will catch these players more off guard? And there's all these things that you need also to think about.
Yeah. No, that's well said. And that's, I think, another reason why, we did see a lot of very experienced DLC players in the top 16, in the top 8, and then, in the top 2. Practice is practice. And when you've done a number of different challenges, I mean, these are all fantastic players at the top, but, experience matters.
Can you let me highlight some opposite situation?
Yes.
That was one of the top 64 players who played Sapphire Emerald, the first Sapphire Emerald to ever top cut an event.
Mhm.
The person is Matt Lun R on Melee, and he posted on X today or like yesterday about his run, and it's
Yeah.
an absolutely
Yeah.
crazy story.
I actually
So
have that up on Twitter right now.
okay, so that guy learned about what Lorcana is 2 weeks ago. He decided to just commit and discover the games really, really quickly. He's from Sydney, so it's like not even close from Melbourne, right? Like he needed to take a flight to go there, and he arrived at the event on Saturday morning as early as possible with 12 cards in his pocket
Oh my gosh.
and a
spread is
deck list
bonkers.
in mind, right? Like he knew exactly what are the 60 cards he would love to run, but he only had 12 of them. And basically, he had contacted one of the potential vendor that were supposed to be there, and eventually they couldn't get there. Like the final, like within the last week, they couldn't get there, and so basically, he was out of resources on how to find the cards. And on the morning, he just rushed and asked everybody he was seeing, "Oh, can I buy you some of these cards or whatever?" And and like even like the vendors didn't have all the cards that he needed, and so he scrapped like 5 cards from this person, 12 cards from this person, 20 cards from this vendor or whatever. Like he just scrapped cards, and by the time his first like he was on between, he has like his first opponent, he said to his opponent, "I don't have a deck. I will give you the win. I need to actually go to the city and go to shops and find the cards." And so he left his
gosh.
round
Oh my gosh.
This is the best
and,
story.
and buy cards from different shops and came back before the first round is over. He was only missing like 1 or 2 cards at that point, and eventually asked people on the venue, and some people like gave him like a Baymax, like a you know, and he went on and qualify for day 2.
Holy cow.
Yeah, it's
That's
bonkers.
the most crazy
Yeah.
thing I have ever heard of, like the determination of a TCG player. Like
That is incredible.
this is insane, and basically got knocked out on Sunday morning, unfortunately, by a good player. And this person also played Kendall Burdett in round 8 and
Oh, really?
defeated him. He defeated
Oh,
Noah
wow.
Mott, but to be fair, this deck is an absolute monstrosity and just prey on Ruby Amethyst. Like it's just so good against Ruby Amethyst, and so it kind of makes sense. But anyway, this deck we already knew about. I have done a deck guide like in November with some of my friends that actually built an early version of that. And so we all knew about that deck for a while. Like it's not a rogue deck. The way he built it was maybe a little bit different, but not by much. And basically what this deck wants to do is it wants to ram to Clarabelle and then play and bounce everything your opponent has on board with like your welcome and stuff like that, and play Bend to My Will. And so no board, no hand, and you have like probably like 8 cards in hands. So that's what it wants to do. And when it does it, it feels bad. If you think Bucky was oppressive, have your opponent go turn 5 Clarabelle into turn 6, bounce everything, Bend to My Will. This is a miserable experience, and I really hope that this deck doesn't become meta, because it's very miserable. And
Wow.
if you know how to play it, it can be pretty powerful, but it's inconsistent. It's very, very much more inconsistent than a lot of the other meta decks. And there's ways to play around it if you start noticing. Like I have played against that deck a bunch, because some people in my testing team are the originator of the deck, and so they would always bring up that deck in our testing tournaments. I was like, oh, not again. This is not a real deck. I need to fight my way through that. And I would just like, okay, I just need to play like Big Sisus and Sharks, and they don't have much ways to deal with them. Right? So, but anyway, it's incredible story. So huge congrats to Maddie, Luz, Mathlon. Like, dude, you're out of this world. I can't believe your determination to do that.
Incredible.
Yeah.
That's insane, because that's not the only story of somebody like showing up to the DLC not having all their cards that I heard of. I know there was an American player that showed up, Lore Gaines, going, this is like DLC / honeymoon, gets there, realizes that he was so worried planning for their honeymoon that he completely forgot his deck for the DLC and had to do a similar thing where it wasn't the day of, I don't think, but he had to run around all, a bunch of places in Australia and find a way to rebuild his deck, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, Lord Games at least add like a, players know him. He has like a player base. He has like friends to ask. This guy doesn't have
nobody.
Anybody have this deck?
Yeah.
That's so incredible.
It's fun stories. That's great. I'm glad you brought that up, because I did stumble across that thread earlier, and I did post a link to that thread in the chat. If anybody's watching and wants to go check out that thread and give Maddie a follow, because he's a fun guy to follow. But before we so I'm glad we jumped in, talked about the good, talked about Ed's performance. We dove deep into the Ruby Sapphire.
Talked about how amazing Matt is.
Talked about how amazing Matt is. I do feel like there's kind of an elephant in the room, which we do have to talk about briefly, because we have another guest we're going to bring in. I want to talk about more decks and more play, and it's going to be fun. So we said we're going to talk a little bit about the good, and I will say, in addition to some amazing performances, some amazing stories like Lore Gaines and Maddie, pulling these decks together last minute. There were some other goods. It was Australia's first tournament. A lot of folks getting to experience a challenge for the first time. I did see a lot of really great stories from players who talked about how amazing it was to experience a challenge in their home country. And get to experience a challenge period, because they weren't able to make any of the North American challenges. A lot of great heartwarming stories. So there was a lot of good, and kudos, we do have to say kudos for pulling together this event, with a few months notice, and allowing people in Australia, the Australian community, to experience this within the first, year and a half. So a lot of good. There was an issue, and I don't want to go into the details of it, but everybody's familiar, I think, at this point. There's been a number of videos on it about an issue that happened on stream that resulted in a judge call, which was controversial. Everything that we've read leads us to believe that the judge made a mistake. Well-intentioned, I'm sure. Nobody involved in the event, a judge, a staff member, a tournament organizer, caster, anybody wants something like that to happen. So a judge made a bad call, it seems like, which resulted in an unfavorable game state for a player. And it's resulted in a lot of talk this week. And with that, again, I don't want to dive into the specifics of the event and what happened, but what I will say is that it seems that we've now, as challenges have gone on, and we've had more and more events, it's not uncommon coming out of these events to have a little bit of consternation in the community about how particular calls were handled, and then about the communication afterwards. And I think that there are some takeaways that we can take out of Melbourne, some advice, some thoughts that I think the community has, that we have, on ways we could move forward to prevent some of this from happening. Because before I, ask your all's opinion, everybody else who's either on stream or Brandon or Sailor, I think the issue is, all of us who love this game, we invest time, money, energy, hours of testing, hours of our lives into this game. And we want to, all players want to feel like they can go to a competitive event, whether it's a league or a set championship or a Disney Lorcana challenge, and be on an equal footing with every other player there. And that if you play, your hardest, and you learn and you study, you have an equal chance of winning with everybody else. And that's what any TCG, that's what you hope for. And so when it feels like, and it's not necessarily not the case, but when it feels like that's not the case, because some players, it seems, based on news, are able to gain an advantage, by working around some of the rules or doing things which some people would consider uncouth. It feels bad and it feels unjust, and people voice their opinion. So, but to pitch back over to you all, I do think there's some things we can learn from this, some suggestions that a lot of people have that we have, and ways we can move forward. So I don't know. What are your all thoughts?
I just want to talk specifically about like a little bit, just to make everybody like on the same page. So this is start 4 match. It's Ruby Sapphire against Emerald Amethyst. There's a magic broom in play, and it's being it's questing, and then the player wants to he's basically thinking about what to ink, decide on ink something, play goat. And then there's two things that goes into the bag, which is the lore from the goat and the possibility of the broom to be banished to draw a card. And they go both into the bag, and you can decide which one you want to resolve first. And within the rules, it says that right now, and it's like an outdated part of the rules, is that you need to decide the order in which you're going to do that before you resolve the first one. And so that leads to think that you need to say, I'll trigger the goat first, and then I'll trigger the broom second. And why it's there is because to simply not allow the player to be able to change the order after maybe they've revealed the new information or something. And basically what happened is that they didn't say that they would put both those triggers onto the bag, as we never do, right? Like we never say, okay, I'll put this, and this. Like that's what we should do, but we always shortcut it, right? Unlike we take our pen and then we write one lore on the goat, and so we can say goat, right, and write down the one, and then he goes to banish his broom, and that's where his opponent stops him, because he's thinking you basically didn't said that you wanted to do it, but you have already triggered your first trigger, so now right, and so it was ruled as a mistrigger, whereas in every occasions, every Amethyst players in the world, they always do that, right? Like we always like just take it for granted that we're gonna resolve one of them in first, and then we're gonna decide on whatever we want to resolve the second, but we don't actually say it out loud that we're gonna resolve both. And I'm pretty sure that's where the mistakes were not the mistake, but where the call was made, right? Because some of the rules are not exactly clear about that, right? And there should have more clarity on how we can resolve these things in the order of our choice without having to say it out loud every time, because that takes too much time, and it makes the game for like being very procedural. And I don't think as a community we want that in Lorcana. We want something to be a little bit more approachable, and we can assume between two players that know the game that we could be just be able to do those do those things without going too much into the nitty gritty of like rulings, right? So there's holes in the rules, and they have Ravensburger have acknowledged that, and basically they haven't updated that part of the rules quite yet, because they want to wait before doing like a good bunch of updates to it.
Sorry, Sailor, I'm going to cut you off because we actually have one of our favorite rule meisters in the green room as well that I think could add a lot to the conversation. Do you want to bring him in?
Yeah, let's bring him in. Just real quickly, we're from the green room. Welcome in, Joe. AKA
Shocker, it's me.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, Joe. I'm so sorry, Sailor. I wanted you to finish, but Joe was in the green room watching us kind of talk, and I was like, I feel like he can definitely add a lot to this conversation. So, Sailor, please continue.
Yeah. So I just want to say, so that's the context, right? as for me, I would hope that we can live in a world where I can shortcut these things. It's basically what I want in Lorcana, right? Like I would not want us to be in a situation when we can uh, basically go too heavy on these type of like of these triggers like mentioning and stuff like that. I know it's there to prevent people from abusing them, but I want to be in a spot where we don't need to do that as religiously as like that. And so the judge was the judge call was well, the opponent called the judge, and the judge call was made, and I and everybody who watched the stream saw the desperation and the frustration into the victim of that, right? And I could feel I was feeling so bad for that person, and I just want to take the opportunity that I have right now to say that I empathize with you a lot, and I feel very sorry that you had to live that, and that now you are living with the consequences of having been in that situation. And of course, the right thing would have been to appeal, but you didn't, and you shouldn't be ashamed for that, because like you were not supposed to be there in the first place. And so that's my point of view. Whereas for the other player, I feel like we should move forward and try to find constructive ways to prevent that in the future. But I would be really wary about like giving direct insult and aggressively like proposing like saying anything to that player that could make him feel like his life is threatened, or he's not, he should be like overly ashamed. I don't agree with what he did, but we need to build the system so that we don't allow this to happen, right? And it's not going to change by blaming this one person. It's going to change by us leading the way for making a system in which that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Okay, Joe, I'm interested in your thoughts on not basically like the proper way rules wise. We talked a little bit about the situation. How, as a DLC judge, you would expect a player to play out that situation and manage those triggers.
Yeah. So, I mean, okay, first of all, I definitely 100% want to acknowledge the documentation that we have to work from is very much not perfect. There's a ton of room for growth, and it's not clear in every specific way that it always should be, right? 100%. The paragraph from the tournament rules that Sailor brought up, he did explain that it's out of date and such. I want to kind of add on to that. It's not just out of date. It is so out of date that it actually predates the comprehensive rules itself. It's very old, and there's the way that it is written directly contradicts with the rules that we have for resolving triggers in the CRD, so much that it doesn't apply to those anymore, because it doesn't use the same terminology, right? It was intended for that situation originally, but now actually really applies to nothing. There are no simultaneous actions, is the phrase that it uses, that occur in the game, period. There's no reason for it to still be in the documents at all. It should have been deleted 18 months ago. The fact that it hasn't been is a problem. So the world that Sailor was talking about wanting to live in, where we don't have to go through the motions and say, at this time, I am adding Goat's trigger to the bag, and I am adding, that. We already live in that world. There is no expectation based in the rules, based in conventions of play, based in anything that you should be doing that says you have to say what triggers you're putting in the bag. The rules say that you do it, but that is an abstraction. It happens automatically, right? When I play goat's trigger just goes in the bag. It's in there. It happened. Broom's trigger went in the bag. It happened. It's done. The only thing I have to announce is what I'm doing, right? And that doesn't not have to be verbal either, right? If I'm gaining goat's lore and I go poke that goat and then go write one lore down, that's enough, right? I have acknowledged that trigger. Everybody knows what I did. The judge can come over, even if there's a judge call, when my opponent's like, "What were you doing, man?" And the judge comes over and sees what happened. There's no problem with that, right? I poked the goat and I wrote down my lore. That's acknowledging the trigger and resolving it. Done. And you can resolve your triggers that are in the bag in the order that you want. I am waving my hand down around it a lot. But it's true. And I think Sailor mentioned as well something about wanting to maintain the order to avoid gaining information and changing your decision based on gained information, which was certainly the original intent behind that out-of-date paragraph. No longer the rule, right? If I've got 2 draw triggers to resolve, like a Merlin squirrel, right? Lets you look at the top 2. I think that's the right Merlin.
Yes.
You can choose. Do I want to look at my top and then draw, or do I want to draw and then find out what's next? You can do that. That extra information does not change how the trigger resolves. So we are already in that world, right? We're the design intent behind the way the rules are now, whether that is clearly communicated as a separate point, but the design intent is that what I can do from my bag, from my triggers, I can do in the order that I want. And as long as I have communicated to you in some way what I am doing, then I get to do it.
Yeah.
Done.
Well, that's good. I mean, I personally, like, I've never felt that I needed to, as you suggested, say, like, announce every single trigger. I go through the motions. I know the triggers are there, and as you suggest, Joe, I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I'm even still deciding whether I'm gonna pop the brooms. I take the goat, I put the 1 down, and then I think about popping the brooms or not.
And that's fine. That's allowed.
Yeah, that's
So,
wild.
I'm still debating. But anyway, no, I appreciate that rundown. I do want to say I appreciate both of your comments so far and the idea of moving forward constructively. I do want to bring up, as one of the, because as I, racked my brain over how to address this today and thought about, ways to move forward. I do think the suggestion that we've seen over and over again for an official judge program, I think it would be helpful for a few different reasons. And I won't go into all of them. We could do a whole video on it. But before I turn over your thoughts, one of the things is training is a piece of it, in order to make sure that every judge, going in is qualified through the company and knows the exact rules. But then also it facilitates communication. Because if you have an official judge program and something like this happens and you have people on the rolls and an email roster, you can immediately distribute information about situations like this that arise to make sure that all judges, in the program are on the same page about, this issue and how to move forward. There's a bunch of different reasons that it is beneficial. I understand, a lot of the reasons it may not have been implemented yet. Logistically, it's a challenge. There's, administrative costs. There's a lot. But I do think that having a comprehensive program with certification, everything else would alleviate some of the consternation that we've seen. And so that's one suggestion I have moving forward. And one of the things I think I take away from this. I don't know. What are all three of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean,
go. Oh, or Brendan.
I couldn't agree more about the judge program. This is not the first time that there's been like some sort of drama come from a judge decision for previous events. And I feel like it's something that the community's been asking for a long time now. I mean, I know right after North American Continentals, Liam and Aaron, you and I, we all got on here, and one of the things that we said we needed was a judge program, even, back then. And there were times before that it was needed as well. I love the idea.
That Taylor was even on that episode as well.
Yeah, maybe he was. Yeah. and I like the idea of having some sort of standard to vet judges by as well, because right now there just isn't one. Not only does it help larger events like this, but it helps smaller events like set championships and the ladder. Because right now, in regards to judging a set championship, it's basically like whatever the store feels like doing, and if you were a judge at a previous DLC or a previous event, that's usually good enough to just like make you a judge for the event. And I've heard more than one story of judges ruling in a way that's not accurate, and that's not to say that like judges don't make mistakes. There's a big reason that I'm not a judge, and that's because I
A lot
could
of
not
pressure.
keep up. It's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of rules you have to understand, a lot of very intricate things that you have to know. I know it's not something that I could do. But not only do I think it would help like the larger events, it helps the smaller events, and then with it, hopefully we'd see stuff that we've also been talking about for a long time, which is like judge promos and things to sort of like compensate judges in those manners for set championships, all the way up to DLCs or continentals as well.
Yeah.
Yes, judge promos, please. That would be great. That's why I want a judge program. No,
Yeah.
it's not. It's not.
Well,
Sailor, you were going to talk, so
yeah.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I'll jump in after.
So I want to actually jump back, like way back in time to before Atlanta, and we had heard rumors, right? We had rumors that there was a judge program coming. We knew something was in the works. We'd heard that like the application process for PPG was going to be like a trial run way back then. So like it's been on our, especially in the judge community, it's been on our minds. It's something we've been hoping for, looking for, waiting for so long. Like we finally got documents. We were like, yay, we have actual rules, not just collection of Discord screenshots. So and then from there we were like, okay, let's get some like the next thing. Let's start organizing everything. And well, we're still waiting.
Yeah.
We've had some promising, things like some job postings that have mentioned judge programs, and we've had some one that I applied for a long time ago turned out to be not really related to a judge program at all, but that's fine. This one with I think it's for like OP over the whole US or something. I don't know. Something I'm not qualified for, so I didn't read too much into it.
There's been actually like a ton of job posting recently. One of them is like communication director, which is very much means that they don't have one right now, and it would exactly be the reason why we're lacking information, right? And so I think that Lorcana grew really big, really fast. There's a bunch of things that they learned, right? Our Ravensburger learned, but also like PPG and all the organizers of these tournaments, these DLCs learned throughout the season. And basically, all that knowledge didn't really transfer to Melbourne, right? Like they all started fresh.
It started fresh, yeah.
And
new staff, new company, yeah.
But with some of these players being much more experienced also coming in, and so there's been, I think I wasn't there, but I feel like there was this difference in expectation and how it was handled and how it was organized that was not aligned with what we had towards the end of our season, right? Like in Seattle. And so, because everybody had a lot to say about how Atlanta was run, right? But then right after in Chicago, we're like, oh, this is already so much improved. And
Things
so,
got better
and then in Fort Worth, it was also improved upon, right? And so, and now, like, I feel like this DLC in Australia has been pushed, but without all the resources that it needed for it to be as good as our last DLCs have been. And the judge program is something. The communication is another thing. I think like a whole team taking care of the organized play. But you know what? That is a lot of different things, and like by growing so fast and doing all these awesome things, which the DLCs are, and like the Continentals and the Worlds, right? It's all leading up to something that feels like this game has been there for many years, whereas it's only our first year, right? So we're expecting so much from this company because we love the game, obviously, and because they've done a lot of things right, giving us this awesome circuit, right, of competitive play. And now every time they fail us, we're like, we feel like we're expecting more and more of them, but you kind of need to track, it can go to the certain,
Something I hear a lot is, sorry, Brandon.
I was just gonna say real quick, that's something I've noticed about the Lorcana community is like, even since, the first chapter, this community is, I don't know if demanding is the right word, but like there's always things that we're like, this can be improved. We want to see, this thing done better. And more than anything, I think we can say that Ravensburger is doing their best. There's a lot of things that obviously still need improvement, but I really appreciate Sailor's take and view on a lot of this, which is just to look back and be like, DLCs weren't announced until March of last year. And
less than a year.
We just finished a DLC in the third region, of the world, when we didn't even know that we were going to have DLCs this time last year. And so I do think there's a little grace that needs to be had. And ultimately it comes from, I think, everybody just loving this game so much. But while we talk about all these changes that need to be made, it is important to recognize that there are a lot of areas that are being touched. And after every single event, there's a new one that we all point to and we say, we need this thing went wrong. It needs to be fixed. And there's like 7 of those happening at once.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And the other point I'll mention on that is patience. And I think all of us have alluded to it. And that's not to say, what I'm not saying, everybody watching, out there in the Twitterverse, is that we shouldn't have these discussions and we shouldn't ask for change. That's not what I'm saying. And I know that when people view things that they think are, unjust or that something wrong happens, they want to voice their opinion. And I'm saying, please do that. But what I am saying is, Ravensburger is a 100 and some odd year old company. They're working with Disney, which is also a very large company. Ravensburger exists on multiple continents, and every single decision that the company makes has ramifications and ripple effects and everything else. And so I'm confident, I think, Brandon, and everybody that you're right. And that, we have seen changes every single DLC. We've seen changes each set championship, and everything is getting better. I do think that things are going to move at a, out in social media, we want changes the next day. Sometimes it takes a little bit for, bureaucracies to move things along.
No, sorry. I'm sitting here thinking about this because, like, obviously our daughter was born right around the time that Lorcana came out.
Like the day Lorcana came out.
Lorcana is 17 months and 2 days old.
Yeah.
Literally 17 months and 2 days old. Its first wide release was September 1st of 2023. Like, it's incredible what this game has accomplished in 17 months and 2 days from its first release, when people were wrapped around blocks, waking up at 3 a.m. just to get cards. Like, we're like 18 months out from the Gen Con storm. Like, it is crazy how far we've come and the progress we've made. So, I think just imagine what we accomplish in the next 18 months.
Yeah.
I hope a lot of what we're complaining about as a community, of course, is being resolved. And I also want to say that I will always try to make cheaters accountable for what they did, and that we should be strict about it. Very, very strict about it.
Definitely.
And that's one of the reasons why I wasn't too worried about all these DQs at Continentals North America. I was like, well, we don't know exactly what are the context of those DQs, but to me, it feels like they've taken that very seriously, and they're working to not let anybody get away with it. And that came from an organization that had 6 DLCs working towards that. And
Yeah.
I don't think we can expect the same thing from a first time DLC in Australia.
Yeah.
But I just want to say that like I'm really disappointed that it was led that way, and I
Mhm.
was always trying to fight against cheaters, against people who are trying to angle shooting. Basically, is the word that
Mhm.
we're using for people that trying to take advantage of certain rules of certain players that don't know the rules.
Mhm.
And I don't want to say exactly what happened because I wasn't there, and I don't want to say that person is a cheater because
Mhm.
like we shouldn't say that.
Mm-hmm.
The judge are allowed to say that by a DQ, and like if we have like reason to think he is as a community, we can say it, like we can think it, or we can say this was not good and we don't want that in our community, but we cannot say it warrant like we can say it's a cheating if the judges are there to say that
Yeah.
instead of us, right? So
Yeah.
we just need to be really wary as a community to try to go on witch hunt. And of
Yeah.
course, I'm very, very sad it happened, but let's not go that way. Like, we don't have to do this.
I
We just need to make sure that it doesn't happen anymore.
And
I
I
agree.
think I will say, I think that is such a perfect segue to our next guest, because
Oh,
I think we
yeah.
need to get back to the positives of
Yeah.
the amazing things that happened
Yeah.
this last weekend. And I think the performance of our next guest is one of the amazing things that happened last weekend. So
Yeah. All right. You know this already. All right. Yeah, I do. We have one more guest to bring in, and there's plenty. I will say there's plenty more conversation to happen around this incident, and please let's keep the discussion going because I know it comes from a place of love across the community. But we have had him waiting in the green room for quite a while, so let's welcome in Jonathan Lamb. Jonathan, welcome.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
yes.
Okay,
Um, Jonathan's a player that we've been following, especially in North America, for quite some time. Did very well in a number of different challenges. The one that sticks out to me is the #1 seed in Toronto. Going into day 2, and you flew down to Australia and you finished in the top 4. An incredible performance.
Wait, I have a very critical question to ask before we
Sure.
get into his actual performance.
Okay.
Did you see any adorable blue healers while you were in Melbourne?
I wish. I really was hoping that I could just go to Australia and see like kangaroos and koalas everywhere, but I guess maybe that was a pipe dream.
Well, congratulations, Jonathan. It was an amazing, amazing performance. It was so fun and exciting to watch you play, and we were all, definitely rooting you on back home. So
Thank you. I really appreciate the support from everyone.
yeah.
Can I ask, before we get into your deck and everything, what was the experience like having done a number of different challenges in North America? And now you went to Australia. How was that experience?
I'll say it was very different for sure. I think a biggest thing is like the player count was the most noticeable thing walking there, and I think that everyone was really nice. Everyone was really nice. It was like just like any Lorcana player, everyone was super kind to each other. Um, they were welcoming and just having fun. Um, I would say there are a lot of newer players there. Just because they've had the game for not that long, but you could tell like an experience that's I would have to explain my cards to my opponents sometimes. That's fine, but it was a lot of fun.
No, that's awesome. Anybody have any other questions before I pull up his deck list? I'm gonna do it. I mean, so you're one of those players, John, who you've been become well known for a particular archetype. I know you don't necessarily always play this, but you play this more often than not. I think between you and R&B, you're the folks that I think of whenever this deck is mentioned. So you chose to go in with Sapphire Steel and performed very well. Other than the fact that you're familiar with and love it, why did you choose to bring this deck into this particular challenge?
Mostly just because I don't really know how to play anything else. Also, yeah, that's pretty much the biggest reason. Yeah.
Interesting. So how well do you think Sapphire Steel is positioned in this particular meta?
I think it's I think it's a lot better than the most people think it is. I think a lot of people with the introduction of like Genie and like the Mines deck that's really aggressive, people are scared of playing decks that only have like small skill removal because it's hard to deal with big bodies. But I think that um yeah, I think it's a lot better than saying it is, and I feel like I feel like we're kind of a dying breed. It's been a long time since I've seen another blue steel wheel player play. Hopefully, with his performance, there are more people who are encouraged to play the game.
Yeah, there's
I think it,
some. Go ahead, Googly.
I think it's definitely a deck that require it's a higher skill floor. Is that the right way around? I don't know if I'm saying it right, but it requires more skill to play at a basic level and definitely has a higher skill ceiling, right? You've got a
Yes.
ton of room
Yeah.
in there for incredibly just
Yeah.
sneaky
And
plays.
also, when you're playing from behind, you don't have to be prepared to help you out.
Yeah.
Mm.
I would see like Red Blue, and I'm always so jealous that they just have a reset button.
That is true. That insurance policy.
Mhm.
Um, real quick, we got a chat question real quick. This is a big question, but Satan Joe on Twitter asks, we don't see a whole new world running around as much as we used to. There's even a lot of no wheel Sapphire Steel decks running around. So
Yeah.
playing a whole new world is a skill that we don't see quite as much anymore. So when is the ideal time to play a whole new world?
So it's very, very complicated. But I can go into the basics of it. So most of the time it would be depending on your opponent's board state and your opponent's hand size. And whether you feel comfortable enough to be able to refill their hand and still take control of the board. Um, Either that or another situation where it could be good is if you have a lot more ink than your opponent. That way you can utilize a fuller hand more than your opponent. So if you have 10 ink, then you can play 10 ink per turn, whereas your opponent, even if they have a full hand, they can probably only play one or two characters that are like 4 or 5 ink. So those are some good situations, and um, other situations are when you're looking for answers to your opponent's deck. So it's a good drawing 7 cards is really powerful, and it allows you to find the answers that are deep in your deck. So whether it's like a timely grab your swords or a timely peek to block a be prepared, those are also good times to play one well.
I can add that it can be a really disruptive tools against some of the opponents that are amassing the cards that needs to answer what you are doing also. So
For sure, yeah.
sometimes it can just be like a very big discard spell as well.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, that's one of the things I used to talk about when commentating way back in the day when Steel Song was I feel like more popular is that turn 3 wheel, especially when you're on the play and your opponent has mulliganed into their ideal starting hand, is brutal because not only usually we set yourself up with singers to utilize more resources, but that disruption, because whether in the beginning of the game or in the late game where they've managed to cycle through a lot of their deck and collect the tools that they need, anyway, it can be brutal.
Yeah. I completely agree. When you have a perfect hand and then Steel Song gets like the quick fifth line and a wheel, it can completely mess up your curve, and you have a fresh 7 set cards, and sometimes your game plan doesn't flow as smoothly anymore.
Yeah. Question about a couple cards here, or at least one. Pleakley is a fun little card in this deck. I don't know that I've seen too many people run Pleakley, even in Sapphire Steel decks. How do you usually leverage him, and how well did he perform for you?
He's been amazing. I think that I didn't like him in the first iteration of the online the cross-continental tournament. But I think it was due to the other parts of my deck not really fitting well with him. But recently at the North America Continentals and this DLC, he has been super overperforming. I guess since the meta is becoming very aggressive, the early line of Simba and then the Sudrop and the Quickly allows a lot of early board control and allows you to get some early board if it's because these bodies are mostly disposable and you're just using them to keep your opponents in check. So Simba can block the Curse Merfolks and any X1s from questing, and then when you play Bleakly, it also blocks any 3/3s, which are very common in purple and very common in steel. So it just really puts a limiter on your opponent's lore that they can gain in the early game, and it also allows you to start turning the corner very quickly.
Interesting.
One of
Uh,
the
Go ahead.
go
Bobby.
ahead.
No, go ahead.
One of the things that I find most interesting about Sapphire Steel decks, even way back since set 1 or 2, is they seem like the most like flex. I don't know if toolbox is the right word, like decks, but more than any other deck, when I look at a blue steel deck list, I feel like it has the most like 2-ofs and 1-ofs. So I wanted. There's like a couple cards in this list that I'm sort of interested in for that reason, because I imagine, like we mentioned earlier, you don't have a just like reset button through Be Prepared or Sisu or something. So imagine every card in this deck has a purpose. Pyros is one of those that I haven't seen in quite a while, and also with the Arthur as well. I'd just love to know sort of like what were the thoughts behind putting them in your deck. Are there certain matchups you're specifically considering, or maybe even certain specific cards?
Yeah, sure. So Pyros, I I have loved Cogsworth ever since the set 3 blue steel, but I think that just because the meta is so fast, sometimes he doesn't offer enough like um like pressure on your opponent's board, since he only has 2 attack for challenging. And so that can be a problem especially if your early board gets removed. Cogsworth only gains value if you have a wide board, because the amount of value he gives to you is dependent on how many characters you have. So he gives each of them resist. Whereas Pyros, him being on the board is already a big threat to your opponent and makes them think twice about questing, as if they do quest everything, he has the ability to take everything out on his own. So it's just a quest deterrent. And also, he can be paired with Arthur. When you play Arthur, it allows Pyros to challenge ready characters, allowing him to just take out something and then ready himself and then take out another thing. And he'll gain resist 2 and counter +2. So that's pretty much enough strength and health to take out a whole board by himself.
That's bonk. How often did you get that combo off? Because that's bonkers.
I think I got off like maybe 0 times or 1 time. But I guess I like to have cards that are very flexible, and although these cards are good in conjunction with each other or combination with each other, they are good standalone. So I view Arthur just as another form of removal, and one that is specifically gets around Pete. Because a lot of the Pyros, right, it encourages your opponents to stand their characters up and then go for one big quest with a Pete. Or the Tinkerbell has the same effect. It punishes your opponents by, if they quest their characters, then you can get extra value. So they will stand their characters, sometimes not even questing them a single time, and then the Arthur will come down and be able to remove them without getting the lore from the character. So it's a big tempo swing, and also he is a 3 lore threat. So it helps you gain lore much quicker while reducing your opponent's lore.
Pyros can also be super spicy if you've got Aerial or Tamatoa out, because he is one of the very few readying effects in the game that does not stop you from questing. So you can double Aerial for 10 lore.
Yes.
And then your opponent is very sad.
Indeed.
We have another question in the chat from somebody we recognize. Ed Chu asks, "What is the purpose of the 1 TPO?"
Okay, so just as someone said earlier, Blue Steel is very, very flexible and toolboxy, and that's one of the reasons why it's one of the I would say it has one of the most even matchup spreads in the meta. Just because Blue Steel players, we build the deck in order to counter the meta, and so we have to have a high like we have to have a lot of different types of answers for each type of deck, so that we can make sure that we can find it in case we need it. And Holding World is what actually enables us to play with a game plan that relies on finding cards that have low copies or low counts in our deck. So the TPO, just because ramp is so important to this deck, if you miss your ramp, then you a lot of times just lose. And Pleakley requires a earlier character to be played in order to get the body on the board. So the 3/4 body can only come down if you already have a pre-existing character. And so I view the TPO as a 5th Simba, right? So you wouldn't really want to ink a Smee or with a Pleakley, but you could. I wouldn't feel bad about inking a Simba. That's the main purpose of the Simba in the deck. And inking a Tipa actually allows you to get to Tinkerbell on turn 4. So if you go Tipa into Pleakley, then you can play Tinkerbell on turn 4. But also, if you miss your ramp on turn 3, you can just play Tipo on turn 3. So I would say Tipo is a to increase the consistency of hitting your ramp. He acts as a 5th Simba for Pleakley, and then he also acts as a fourth Pleakley as a turn 3 ramp option.
Wow. Sometimes I do these streams and I'm listening and I'm taking things in, and then I make a note for myself. I'm like, you have to go back and rewatch this, like, to gain the full. This is a whole bunch of knowledge with how you think about, not only the specific instance, but how you think about deck building and the purposes of different cards. This makes me a better caster. Somebody did ask in the chat, I wasn't familiar with this, but what's up with the double, triple Tinkerbell shift in this top 32 game? Something spicy happened here?
Yeah, I had the pleasure of playing opponent called Azri, and he was on Amber Steel, and I believe this was game 3. And he just went super wide. I had to just slam a Tinkerbell down on turn 4 after quilling, and just pray that it didn't get used. And his board was Daisy, Ursula, Pete, Gaston, and a Rapunzel. And then he had just played a second Pete. So he had 6 characters on board, and I only had a single Tinkerbell on board. And his Daisy quested gave me a Tinkerbell, and I top decked a second Tinkerbell or a third one. I double shifted them, and then wiped his whole board. And that was honestly, I don't know how that happened, but I just got really lucky and that gave me the ability to be able to. Sorry about the airport announcement. That was the ability to give me the ability to come back in the game, and I ended up stopping him at like 19 lore with 3. But that was like a crazy play that I've never done before.
You had 3 Tinkerbells stacked on top of each other on the board.
Yeah, yes, it's a very expensive 18.
That's where you wish you would have. That's where you wish you would have a snake just to get them all back up after what she's done.
That would be nice. Yeah.
Yeah, that's bonkers. Do you play them enchanted as well? Is this deck list?
No. I'm close to foiling on my deck, but I'm a student, so it's been going slow. I got some more Fist from Trills foiled at the event, but I think I'm a few cards off. No enchanted.
It's very sensible.
Yeah, this is true. I agree. I can't play with enchanteds. I don't know. I'm like, in my mind, they're getting like micro scratches, and I know everybody's like enchanted. Cards are meant to be played, but
There's my one Tinkerbell.
I got a new baby
Stay
at
safe
home.
I'll
forever.
show you this. This is enchanted.
Oh, sorry. Never mind.
Hold on, Johnny, you have to hold that.
You've got a butt.
Playing with that? Wait, what?
Which made you big.
Oh, they're upside down. Oh no. We
Whoa.
didn't get the
No, stop
Rapunzels
it.
yet, but sorry. I don't mean to flex, but
No,
I got to put googly eyes on one. That's almost the same as having one.
Yeah, that's fair. You've actually held one. I have. I
But I didn't pick it up.
Oh, fair. All right. There was a moment we were doing nationals, and there was a moment where we were trying to script the final ceremony, where I had to bring the golden Mickeys out to Steve and Ryan to and that didn't happen. Steve just had him in his pocket. But I was like, I'm gonna get to hold 4 at a time.
I will say it was so cool. I was backstage in Anaheim, and the official Ravensburger photographer was taking a picture of all of the golden Mickeys they were going to give out. So he was literally standing at this cocktail table backstage, and the golden Mickeys are just fanned out on the cocktail table while he's taking a photo. I'm like, that is insane.
$8,000 sitting on the coffee table.
They're just sitting there.
Yeah. That's awesome. One day, at some point in time, somebody's going to play a golden Mickey in a game. It will happen.
And it will be inked.
Because, yeah, that's Ink Mickey, Brave Little Taylor.
Not a great card.
Yeah. No, that's crazy.
Ink Mickey.
I want to ask something, Jonathan. How did you beat 2 Ruby Sapphire player in your way to top 4?
So
Taylor's asking for a friend.
You're trying to find out my secrets now, so you can counter me. All right. So the first match, I think it was the first Red Blue was streamed. And I was able to go on the play, thankfully. So, the first game I was able to just wheel and super ramp. I believe that matchup has gotten a lot easier. Because Red Blue hasn't been playing Quill, except for the Red Blue I played in top four, but Red Blue hasn't been playing Quill a lot, so it allows you to gain a lot of ink advantage over your opponent if they're only using 2-drop and 4-drop now. So I was able to gain a lot of ink advantage and just close out the game solely with that. And the second game, my opponent didn't have much card draw, so I was able to, instead of wheeling, I chose to go with Flavisham instead, I believe, and just gain card advantage to just have a slow game plan. It's a little bit risky if they top deck something good, but thankfully he top decks like an Ice Cube and a Maleficent Dragon or something like that, so I was able to close out the game. In the next round, I was against Red Blue on the draw. And game one on the draw, I was able to go from 5 lore. I had to take a risk there, playing a dime first because I was so far behind in lore. I had dime P aerial in my hand, but I couldn't go aerial P because that would not get me to 5. Oh, that would get me from 5 to 15, but not 5 to 20. So I had to play the dime first and just risk that they didn't have the hideaway. And I was able to get the P aerial and then go to 10 and then next one go to 20. I lost on the draw again, and then the third game I went on to play, and I did the same dime aerial P to go from 5 to 20 again.
So basically, the takeaway here was to yes, on the play on the draw is very, very important in the matchup. I agree, but for me, the takeaway is that you were able to win on the draw by making a play that was a little bit more risky, but playing to your outs is like, if I don't risk something here, he's just gonna beat me. So
Exactly, and
you got rewarded for that because it's not like they're running 4 copies of hideaways, right? They sometimes run only.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll share a trade secret. I think a lot of Red Blue players, maybe I shouldn't say this, but a lot of Red Blue players, they're scared of wheeling. So like they're scared of getting wheeled. So a lot of times they will choose to not draw with Flabbersham or play like a more control or more big bodies on the early turns. And so they won't go for Flabbersham draws. And so a lot of times you can quill down to a few amount of cards and you can hold like a quill and wheel, and depending on your opponent's hand size, you can then decide, oh, they ran out of cards, I'm just going to go Flourisham and choose not to wheel. Or if they do go for a card draw, then you can wheel and just take away that advantage right away.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Sailor's getting some tips for his guide.
I mean, of course, so present company not included in the whole being scared of things, like obviously.
I mean, so I actually lost my first Mickey in fourth word to Steven Brandt, which is Bad Vegas, playing Sapphire Steel, where he was on the play 2 of the 3 games. And yeah, but I have also been like at Continentals, I faced it once and was able to 2-0 them. But the game that I won when I was on the draw, it came down to I had 12 cards. He had 15 cards, and he had 23 ink, and I had like 15. And I did like a humongous turn to deal with this board. It was just like Shark into like Tinkerbell that has Song A Whole New World, Take Back My Hideaway that I didn't ink like 10 turns earlier just to make sure that I can have it in the discard for Shark, Hideaway the Dime, and Maleficent Monsters Dragon, the Dematua, and like I had to do very, very like tight plays in order to beat it. And so like I can certainly agree that the matchup got a little bit better for Sapphire Steel. I still think it's a bit favored for Ruby Sapphire, but
yeah. I'll just echo again just before I open it up to any last questions for John. It was very cool. Jonathan, you talking about how Blue Steel is kind of like a dying breed and it's kind of fallen out of favor over the last couple sets. It was very cool to see it in the top 4 and kind of the diversity of the meta in the top on day 2 even, and then as it whittled down was great to see. I know folks will talk
It
about.
was great to see him in the top 4.
Well, and it was great to see him in the top 4 too.
I was like, I mean, if somebody else was playing Blue Steel, I'd be like, okay, that's that's cool.
Yeah.
But then you were playing it, and I was like, yes!
I did. I think I was commentating your match in Toronto, and you were the top seed, going in, and I'm like top seed. And whenever you see the top seed fall to 64, I mean, it's cool for 64, but you kind of feel for whoever that person was who battled their way to the top
It's
spot.
the curse of the first seed.
Yeah, yeah. Bivens knows that well. Who's in the chat as well.
Just come right out and say it.
But no, it was very cool seeing you in the top 4, but then also just seeing Blue Steel represented. And I know people talk about how Ruby Sapphire was well represented in the top, 16, top 8 even. But as we highlighted at the very beginning, and Sailor pointed out, those Ruby Sapphire decks were very different. The 2 that we saw in the finals, and so so even within the colors, we have a lot of diversity.
I will say, Sailor, from what you saw in Melbourne, are you thinking about making tweaks to kind of your tried and true, or are you sticking with what you know?
Good question. It's like there's only one weekend left of set championship. And this last weekend, already on Sunday, I saw some number of Dinkan and lists, right? And people were not having a great time piloting that deck because it's not intuitive. And I've seen students just like being able to adapt on the spot to that strategy. And also, I've seen people saying like, "Oh, I can play Amethyst Emerald again because this deck, like, it farms it because it doesn't play big Sisu anymore." And so I've seen people like, making some decks being much better against that than the regular Sisu on ice. Of course, as always, it's something that needs to be taken in context. And if you bring it to your own set championships, it doesn't mean that you'll be able to achieve the same success, like in a different type of context, and also a different players piloting it. But I don't think there's too much crazy to adapt. I think like some number of Vitalis spheres or hideaways, possibly a little bit more to fight these manners that are really running rampant. That's pretty much it. Don't change too much. People will be there to wait for the fall of Sisu if you stop putting it in your deck, because it's the bane of a lot of people. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Mo Shamlin agreeing with you there. I have to say we have, I think, I don't know, like 5 Worlds qualifiers in the chat here or on stream. So thanks everybody for hanging out. If anybody else have any last questions for John? I have one more. I just want to make sure everybody else has the opportunity to ask anything. No? So Jonathan, my last question, it's kind of a 2-part question. One is, after playing and finishing top 4, anybody, any changes that you're going to make to this deck? Anything you're looking at rotating out after your experience? Or are you satisfied with it as it is? And then the second part to that question is, what's next for you? What are you looking to do now? What's next for you in the world of Lorcana?
So I think for my NA Continentals list to the DLC Melbourne list, I only changed one card, and it's just adding one aerial. Just because there's a lot of red blue, and taking out one Zeus because I really don't like Zeus. So I think the list is perfect as is for this meta. I don't think I would make a single card change. Maybe if the meta develops more, then we will be forced to adapt a little bit more. But as is, I'm very satisfied with how it's running. What's next for me in Lorcana? School started, so I'm going to be busy with that for a bit. But I'm going to be going to the SSG 10K next week, and I will be in Japan for May and June. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Sadly, I didn't get my Worlds invite. I was really close, but yeah, I'll be excited to play in Japan. That'll be a lot of fun. It'll be set 3, I think. So that's when Blue feels pretty good.
That's true.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's a good
This will
plan.
be so interesting to see if they're going the same way as we did, or they're just gonna take a very different meta and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's gonna be so
Gonna be
fun
interesting.
to see the development of that.
Yeah. Oh, well, fascinating. Well, best of luck. Keep us posted. Especially, of course, when you go down and win SSG, like we'll talk to you after that. But looking forward to following your journey to Japan. We'd love to talk to you afterwards. Have you back on to hear about that experience, because it's going to be, I'm sure, really, really cool. And yeah, congratulations on everything. And for those who are watching, you should definitely follow Jonathan. I know he's fairly active on Twitter. His Twitter handle is here, and we'll post it in the show notes. So once again, thanks, Jonathan, for joining us from the airport. And congratulations again.
Thank you so much. All right.
All right.
John.
Bye, John.
Bye.
See ya.
Oh man, that's so cool. Anytime you get to see a golden Mickey on camera, it just kind of like blows your mind a little bit,
Man, how foolish of me to try to show off my Maleficent Monsters
Right.
Dragon
Yeah, right.
Japanese foil, and he just like, I have golden Mickey.
Like, I see your
Just had
Japanese
it out.
card and raise you a Mickey.
Yeah,
He just got back from Australia. What's that? That's not a foil. This is a foil.
Yeah.
It's a,
Was that your Australian accent?
Yep.
Okay.
I don't know that anybody's going
I'm
to
glad
get a
you
Crocodile
told us that,
Dundee
'cause I
reference
didn't
in this
get
day
it.
and age.
That's fair. I'm glad you did, Joe. Otherwise I would have looked foolish. But no, I can't. John, for those who didn't notice, got off the plane, sat, I think, in baggage claim and tuned in. So it's a heck of a flight to and from Australia.
That is like the understatement of a century. Wow. It's a flight.
Yeah.
I feel
so-
like I would just want to go home and take a shower or something,
Right?
not talk
Yes,
to
definitely.
people on my phone.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm sorry, you want my brain to function? No.
Yeah.
You can sleep on the plane.
Yeah.
I personally cannot do that at all, so it would be a nightmare for me to try to
so
fly
Yeah, I
Australia.
couldn't
So many
spend that long
hours.
on an airplane.
Yeah. And just the jet lag too. And I'm trying to play a DLC afterwards, like the day after landing. Yeah. I guess trying to assemble a deck and playing a DLC is even worse. So anyway, amazing conversation. We are about out of time. I will say, I know anybody watching who followed Melbourne, Melbourne, has a lot of thoughts and a lot of things to say. I know we barely scratched the surface here, but as long as the conversations kept going in a respectful way, in a productive way, I think it is useful. So let's definitely keep it going. But with that, I can't thank Joe Sailor. Thanks so much for joining us, and
welcome.
Sailor hanging out the whole time with us, giving us some brilliant insights. And Joe, thanks for jumping in to talk about some judge stuff.
Sensitive subjects.
A sensitive subject. I will say for both of these guests, if you're watching, you should follow both of them. Joe is very active on social media, is one of the foremost rules experts on Lorcana, I think, has been a DLC judge several times. And I don't say that lightly, and occasionally takes pictures of Googled Lorcana cards. So definitely somebody worth following. And if you have any rules questions or any questions about situations on DLCs or whatever, somebody's opinion that I value highly, you should definitely follow him. And Sailor, of course, is one of the best players in the game, Worlds Qualifier, and one of the foremost experts on Ruby Sapphire, and one of the best
Dang
people.
it, you ruined my joke.
Oh, what was it?
Oh, I was going to be like, he's one of the most foremost experts on Ruby Steel. You should definitely check him out. Wrong.
One
It's
day,
funny
maybe with the
because that's
dual,
not what he plays.
Yeah.
Okay.
maybe the dual ink colors will bring Ruby Steel.
I think
I'm
dual,
hoping.
dual Link Ruby Steel is going to be like, give all your pirates +2 resist, or your pirates enter play with +5 willpower. I don't know.
They need draw. Yeah, like
Something.
we need draw in those
yeah.
colors.
That's
When you play a pirate, draw 3 cards.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. I'm down.
I want when you have an alien captain of cost 7 or more in play, you win the game.
And Liam wants to
Still
play
rooting for
Gontoos.
The Treasure Planet
wonder-
OTK deck that we've been waiting for.
make Gantu great.
Oh, it's the
OG
Gantu. Okay, I was
Gantu
thinking
line.
about John Silver. The
Oh,
other
no,
he's the other
alien
one.
No,
pirate.
Yeah,
Sailor,
he's the other one.
Liam owns about 30 Gontoos. It was a thing when Lorcana first came out.
Yeah,
That was a thing that happened.
Buy in the
Gantu.
stock market.
Gantu stocks. Yeah, I bought them all at like $3, and I was like, they can't It's a legendary. It can't get lower than this.
Possibly go lower.
It did.
He knows. He's well aware.
It's $1. Terrible investment. Terrible investment.
Well, you live, you
Um,
learn, you know.
Yeah, 30 years from now, they're going to be
Elena's college fund right there.
tucked away in a little safety deposit box.
You can just give one to her every birthday.
I'm
True.
I
It's
was
a
gonna say, I'm
Gontu.
really concerned what college we're paying for the fact that is her college fund. She's gonna be going to like the University of Clown School. I don't know what she's going to, but like it's not good if
Well.
we're paying for it with Gontoos.
And
Unless-
Lumineers just
Right.
lost the whole clown market.
Thank goodness we have that GI
So
Bill.
this is a plea for Ravensburger to make the Captain Alien meta a thing.
Please pay for our child's
yeah,
college
that's-
education. Make
That's
alien captains a thing. Come on, Ravensburger.
Yeah.
Personal favor. Okay, anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, Brandon, any closing thoughts this week?
One quick closing thought that we didn't talk about, but I do want to take a moment to mention. Like I said, I wasn't able to tune in too much to the stream, but especially on the first day, I heard a lot about the stream in general and its production quality and casters that were there. And I really want to remind the community to like be really kind to everybody involved. I'm just want to reiterate it being their first first DLC doing this. You know, I remember going all the way back to Atlanta. If you go back and watch that stream, I don't recommend you do, honestly, because I hate going back and watching it myself. You know, it was also really rough. And pretty much if they're anything like those of us that have been involved on in other DLCs, they see a lot more than you think they do. So be kind. I think everybody involved did a fine job from what I was able to see. And so, you know, not only do we need to be kind in regards to all the other stuff that we talked about earlier, but everybody involved putting on the actual show, I think it's important to give them grace and patience and room to grow and that sort of thing too.
Very well said.
I will underline the fact that the commentators see more than you think they do. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That thought.
And I will say their families sit in the chat and watch that all day as well. So it's yeah.
But overall,
amazing event.
yeah. Overall.
Yay, Lorcana in Australia.
No. Yeah. Overall. It was great seeing it. You know, the event in Australia. If you watched the whole stream, thanks so much for hanging with us. If you're watching on any platform, appreciate any likes, follows, etc. We'll be here next Monday again, doing the same thing, talking about This Week in Lorcana as we are almost every Monday, except when we have a child.
Which is every Monday. Anyway.
I was like,
The only time we take a show off.
on Monday? What
But thanks so much. Please remember to be kind, and